They got Little Durk in a hole for basically some BS. And right now we're going to show the
Shortly after an inmate spoke about Lil Durk's harsh conditions behind bars, new footage of his release began circulating and quickly went viral.
Durk is in there, man, realizing the world don't stop spinning.
Rappers like G Herbo had already hinted that something major was on the way, but no one expected the reason behind Durk's release to unfold like this. Let's break it down. New footage of Lil Durk quickly went viral. A statement from his legal team set the tone as they described conditions that raised serious concerns, including limited access and harsh treatment, which left fans worried about his health and safety. Many believe those reported conditions played a role in what happened next. At the same time, some fans began questioning why more artists were not publicly showing support, arguing that Smek has stood beside many people in the industry and deserves the same energy in return.
This is a
Life?
This is a life imprisonment case.
Okay.
There's no in between. This isn't state court. There's no,
Right.
hey, we'll do 10, 15. It's a life case.
That statement sits at the center of every.
On October 24th, 2024, Durk was arrested in Broward County, Florida by U.S. Marshals near Miami International Airport. The day before, on October 23rd, 5 alleged members of his Only the Family collective were indicted, including Kayvon London Grant, DeAndre Dantrell Wilson, Keith Jones, David Bryan Lindsay, and Asa Houston. Prosecutors named Durk as a person who allegedly organized the operation. He was extradited to Los Angeles and arraigned on November 15th, 2024, where he pleaded not guilty. The judge ordered that he be held without bond. From that moment, every attempt to secure his release was denied. In December 2024, bail was rejected after prosecutors cited jail calls that allegedly showed rule violations, including the use of other inmates' phone accounts to make three-way calls. In May 2025, another bail review was denied due to reported infractions. In June 2025, prosecutors opposed another request, arguing that he had attempted to flee to Dubai before his arrest. Each time the court's answer remained the same: no release. To IN August 2025 date was placed in solitary confinement after allegedly being found with an authorized Apple Watch. He was moved to the Special Housing Unit, which is a form of isolation rather than general population. Reports state he spent 131 days there over a period of more than 4 months, with only one phone call per month and no in-person visits. On January 6, 2026, his legal team filed a motion arguing that the extended solitary confinement violated federal regulations and potentially his constitutional rights. A review hearing took place on January 7th, and around January 15th, 2026, he was transferred out of the Special Housing Unit and back into general population. A follow-up hearing that had been scheduled for February 9th, 2026 was cancelled because the matter had already been resolved. No further changes to his custody status have been reported. Durk remains in federal custody without bond and continues to face charges that carry the possibility of life in prison. However, for the first time in months, he regained regular phone access, visitation rights, and interaction with others. For fans who have followed every filing and update closely, that change felt significant even though it did not alter the overall case. His attorney described it as a small but meaningful step which reflects the reality of the situation. Durk is charged with conspiracy to commit murder for hire, using interstate facilities to commit murder for hire resulting in death, and using and discharging firearms in furtherance of a crime of violence resulting in death. If convicted, he could face life imprisonment. Federal prosecutors have confirmed they will not seek the death penalty, but the potential consequences remain severe. According to his attorney, Drew Findling, the case presents a high-stakes outcome with little middle ground.
Middle school basketball and federal cases are kind of the NBA all-star in terms of the complexity and everything that goes into it.
That statement sits at the center of everything. There is no middle ground in this case. There is no simple plea to a lesser charge that brings Durk home in a few years. The federal system does not typically operate that way, especially in a case of this scale. Findling emphasized the difference between state and federal cases several times during the interview, and that distinction is critical. Federal prosecutions often involve longer investigations, stricter sentencing guidelines, and far less flexibility once charges are filed, which makes the stakes significantly higher.
That just never happens in a federal case. And I'm saying this to the guy that did an iconic interview of Sammy the Bull Gravano.
The complexity he is referring to begins with the underlying allegations. According to prosecutors, the chain of events traces back to November 2020 when Durk's close associate and fellow artist Davon Bennett, known as King Von, was killed during a confrontation outside an Atlanta nightclub involving the crew of Georgia rapper Quando Rondo, whose real name is Tiquintel Bowman. Prosecutors allege that after that incident, Durk placed a bounty on Quando Rondo's life. According to the government, this allegedly led to a shooting on August 19, 2022 at a gas station near the Beverly Center in Los Angeles. Quando Rondo survived, but his 24-year-old cousin Xavier Robinson, known as Lil Pab, was killed in the gunfire. Federal authorities claim they have assembled extensive evidence, including flight records showing individuals travel from Chicago to California, hotel reservations, and communications that allegedly connect the group to the plot. Prosecutors argue that Durk orchestrated the operation by offering financial incentives and music opportunities to those involved. The government's narrative portrays a successful artist who allegedly used his resources and influence to organize retaliation that resulted in the death of someone who was not the intended target. Another major factor in the case is a reported cooperation of a co-defendant, Jamonte Norman, also known as OTF Jam, who authorities say provided information in exchange for the possibility of a reduced sentence. In the federal system, cooperation can significantly impact a case. Durk's attorney Drew Findling has pointed out the key differences between state and federal prosecutions, noting that federal cases often involve stricter procedures and more structured agreements with cooperating witnesses, unlike some high-profile state cases where testimony has fallen apart under scrutiny.
They're locked in. I mean, they are locked in. They're in front of grand juries. There are multiple.
In the federal system, cooperating witnesses are typically interviewed multiple times and may testify before a grand jury before a case ever reaches trial. If they later change their story or contradict prior statements, they can face additional charges such as perjury or making false statements on top of their existing exposure. The structure of federal cooperation agreements is designed to hold witnesses accountable and strongly incentivize consistency. Because of that, federal cooperators rarely take the stand unprepared or unexpectedly reverse course. Their agreements often tie potential sentence reductions directly to the value and reliability of their testimony. As a result, once someone commits to cooperating in a federal case, they are generally locked into that path, since their own outcome may depend on following through.
And I'm sensitive to that issue because I don't know of another art form, and you have your finger on the pulse of rap as good as anybody in the world right now.
That dynamic is part of what makes this case especially dangerous for Durk. Prosecutors have also suggested he may be tied to additional alleged bounties, including one involving a relative of a witness and a separate Chicago homicide, although no extra charges have been filed related to those claims. The discovery in the case reportedly exceeds 30,000 pages, which has contributed to repeated trial delays due to the sheer volume of material that must be reviewed. If the charges represent the prosecution saw, then pre-trial motions have become the shield used by Durk's legal team. One of the most closely watched battles has centered on whether his own music can be introduced as evidence. On February 4, 2026, prosecutors moved to admit certain lyrics, videos, and imagery, arguing that they demonstrate motive and intent. On February 9, 2026, the judge issued a partial ruling. Specific lyrics from the song Hanging with Wolves were excluded, including a line about boarding a flight with a warrant and daring law enforcement to catch him. The court determined that those words were more related to potential flight risk than to the core murder for hire allegations and ruled them inadmissible. Other lyrics and visual material remain under consideration and could still be presented at trial. The broader debate over using rap lyrics in criminal proceedings extends beyond this case. Drew Findling has criticized the practice, arguing that it disproportionately impacts rap artists and raises concerns about artistic expression being interpreted as literal confession rather than performance. He frames it as a larger systemic issue about how creative work is treated in the courtroom, especially within one specific genre of music.
And I guarantee you that Vlad cannot tell me another musical genre in which the government plays the...
That observation feeds into the broader argument Findling has been advancing throughout the case. He questions whether law enforcement and prosecutors truly understand how music is created and marketed, especially in a genre where storytelling, exaggeration, and persona are part of the art form. Findling argues that without that context, lyrics and visuals can be misinterpreted as literal admissions rather than creative expression. In his view, that misunderstanding can become dangerous when artistic content is presented to a jury as evidence of real-world intent. He maintains that failing to distinguish between performance and reality risks turning entertainment into criminal proof, which could have serious consequences for defendant freedom.
Each of them ended in Dubai, but they were row like 52 middle seat. And respectfully, it's Lil.
The game Findling is describing is a process where prosecutors sift through thousands upon thousands of verses looking for phrases they can connect, however loosely, to criminal activity. He compared it to the children's puzzle Where's Waldo, and the comparison is striking because it suggests that the government is not analyzing evidence so much as hunting for anything that looks like it fits. The point lands hard if a media personality can invest the time to understand how punch-in recording sessions work, how lyrics get assembled over hours and hours of studio time, and how the final product is a creative construction rather than a diary entry. Then surely the people whose decisions can send a man to prison for life should be expected to do the same homework. But Findling's argument is that they do not, and that this failure has consequences that extend across the entire genre. One of the most critical pieces of the defense's strategy has centered on the song Wonderful Wayne and Jackie Boy, a track featuring Doubt and Babyface Ray. Prosecutors included this song in the superseding indictment, alleging that its lyrics celebrated and monetised the death of Sava Robinson and the attempted murder of Wando Rondo. Findling laid out exactly why this allegation collapses under scrutiny. The defense investigated the production timeline and discovered that Durk's contribution to the song was recorded 7 months before the August 2022 shooting even took place.
He's got kids. He's got family. He's got his mom who he loves. He's got his dad who he's waited until 2019, after 26 years.
Months is a critical detail. If that timeline is confirmed at trial, it directly challenges a claim that the song was written to celebrate or profit from the shooting. As Findling argued, the verse could not have been referencing an event that had not yet occurred. The defense also addressed YouTube fan edits that added dramatic sound effects, including audio that some claimed resembled Quando Rondo reacting to his cousin's death. Findling stated that those edits were created independently by fans and were not connected to Durk, Babyface Ray or the official production team in any way. Beyond the debate over lyrics, the defense has filed several motions seeking dismissal of the indictment. In April 2025, a motion alleging that prosecutors misled the grand jury, particularly regarding the presentation of lyrics, was denied. In November 2025, the defense sought dismissal based on reported threats made against the judge and prosecutor, arguing that the situation could impact the fairness of proceedings. That request was denied as well. A separate motion claiming the indictment was legally vague was also denied on November 18, 2025. Despite repeated setbacks, the defense has continued filing challenges reflecting the high stakes of a federal case where a life sentence is possible. Durk's family has also spoken publicly, stating that he has always used music to tell stories, express pain, and process trauma. They argue that creative expression is being mischaracterized and that artists should not automatically have their work treated as literal evidence of criminal conduct. The ongoing bond dispute centers on whether Durk poses a flight risk. Each time his attorneys have requested pretrial release, the court has declined. Prosecutors have relied heavily on the circumstances of his October 24, 2024 arrest near Miami International Airport, and have pointed to international flight reservations allegedly made under his name and the names of associates, including trips to Dubai and Switzerland. The defense has countered by presenting complete travel records, which they say show that the final destination on the itineraries was Dubai and that certain intermediate stops were emphasized without full context. Findling also highlighted the nature of the bookings, arguing that the flights were commercial tickets in economy class with standard seating rather than arrangements typically associated with someone attempting to permanently flee. The dispute over intent versus routine travel remains central to the court's assessment of flight risk.